Let me pull up this story. It's from the Daily Wire. Bill Gates on energy crisis. It's good for the long run. The reason I think this is so important, let me give you a bit of context here. They say the billionaire and Microsoft co-founder explained during an interview with CNBC that although global economies cannot immediately discard oil and gas, current shortages in the European energy market will prompt a faster transition away from fossil fuels. Quote, now without the Russian natural gas being available in Europe, it's a setback. We need to find non-Russian hydrocarbon sources to substitute for those. Keeping those economies in decent shape is a priority. Now, on the other hand, it's good for the long run because people won't want to be dependent on Russian natural gas, so they'll move to these new approaches more rapidly. Here's the point. For all of the people that are very concerned about climate change and the environment and all that stuff, hey, man, I hear you. But these people are lying to you. They're saying it's good that Europe's in an energy crisis right now. Italy, they're using candlelight for their stores. The UK is preparing scripts. This was the Guardian reporting. The BBC is preparing these scripts for when the blackouts hit. Now you've got in the United States, you've got gas in California at $8. You've got gas on the rise nationally. It's over $4 something right now. They're telling you we have to stop using this stuff because of climate change. And then Joe Biden goes to, as you mentioned, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and just says, keep up their production. They clearly still want this stuff. Their agenda is it's political and it does not match what they're saying at home. So I used to be all about like, okay, let's find renewable energies. Then I saw them going overseas to our adversaries. So we're dependent on them. Okay, Bill Gates can point out we don't want to be dependent on Russia. You know what that means? It means American energy independence.
And
it doesn't mean walking away from it.
And we have it. And I'm cognizant I'll be challenged, of course, by the EPA and the Biden administration when I'm governor next year. But we're going to do it because that's underneath the constitutional power of the states. The reason why I would say this is the age of the governors, we saw during the COVID shutdown, which was eye-opening for all of us, whether conservative or not, we saw how dangerous this trend was towards tyranny and stripping away our freedoms that we just took for granted. We saw Pennsylvania with very restrictive powers by Governor Wolf, and never was a governor more appropriately named. And then, of course, Ron DeSantis in Florida. And I kind of say this jokingly, but I really do mean it. I want to bring a little bit of Florida to Pennsylvania as far as freedoms go.
Yeah, but guys, this is not what Bill Gates wants. And what Bill Gates wants is what Bill Gates gets, okay? He paid how much money to the corporate media? $250 million. He bought a lot of influence here. He helped spur on the Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't actually reduce inflation. But we have to understand here, when he's talking about new approaches, he's also talking about specifically the businesses that he has invested in. So he's not talking about energy independence because of the United States drilling and exploring domestic energy. He's talking about unproven technologies that, again, have not been tested, most likely are insufficient. A lot of people are calling them scams, and rightfully so. And when we see this larger problem in the United Kingdom, people will suffer. There's a big potential for blackouts. People will lose their savings, their money, because they're trying to just afford the ability to heat their homes. And for Bill Gates, this is a good thing for the long run. This is his approach. Human suffering is good for the long run. If those are your tactics, what's going to be your end game? And the end game is going to be the same thing. And the carbon that he wants to reduce is, of course, you.
Greta Thunberg, how dare you? She comes out, she says, we got to get off carbon and all that stuff. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I don't like the plastic in the oceans. I don't like the pollution. You mentioned we don't want our trout getting sick. I'm like, yeah, and I want clean. I want to go out to the wilderness on a hike and see no pollution. I don't like when people throw garbage on the ground and stuff like that. And then I see that she's not talking about China or India at all.
Yeah.
And they're such massive polluters, some of the largest, way more than the U.S. They don't mention that the U.S. has actually reduced its carbon substantially, more so than these other countries.
Way more.
They cut down our energy. They drive up our costs. They make it harder for the American working class. And then overseas, they ignore what everyone else is doing.
They don't ignore it. No, you don't understand it. Bill Gates advises the Chinese government. He's buddies with the Chinese government.
So he
promotes the Chinese government. He says on national television, the Chinese zero COVID approach is the right approach. They should, of course, create the social credit score. He loves what China's doing because at the end of the day, it's not about saving the environment. That's just a scam that they have on everyone else to conjure up a larger power grab, all a part of the Great Reset.
I'll throw you one of the hardest hardball questions ever. Do you like what China is doing?
Heck no. I'm watching my language. This is the family-friendly show. Heck no.
Easy question. Yeah, I'm concerned not just about the lies and the manipulation. I'm concerned about, China seems to be very much invested in us embracing ideologies that are ripping this country apart. So while they're massively expanding, while their population is much larger than ours, while they're sinking Vietnamese fishing vessels, they're polluting like crazy. Their cities are so full of smog. There's this one video of a screen. Have you seen this one? They have like this big TV with a sunny day on it because it's just brown skies.
Wow.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to see that here, but I don't think any of us are talking about that.
No.
They're reckless. Reckless and unforgiving.
They're buying garbage from Canada. Canada's like, we're recycling. They're buying it and literally just dumping it in the ocean. They're not recycling any of it, and it's a scam. All of it has been a larger scam against the American people, the people of the world. And again, Bill Gates' partnership with China tells you everything you need to know about him and what he's calling for.
But it makes you feel good.
Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah, it's a big PR scam.
That's the big problem, man. If you are a moderate, liberal, or libertarian-minded person, and you read the news and say, "Hey, here's a thing," they call you far right in the media.
Yep.
If you like the big point that I keep trying to drive home here is they keep saying we got to reduce carbon while actively trying to buy it overseas, while ignoring the carbon being produced by these other countries because they're clearly lying. You point that out, they say it's a right-wing talking point.
Yeah, apparently China is building a coal plant almost every week now. I mean,
Isn't it a violation of these treaties we have with them or something?
It is, because we're supposed to sell them, I guess, a carbon tax or whatever. They're supposed to have a certain limit. But for Pennsylvania, we become energy independent and start being a net exporter. And I call it freedom gas. I mean, that's pretty clean when it burns, and it's going to lower costs in our state. What's the so what? It's be cheaper to live here. Inflation will go down. You have better jobs, and people want to live in Pennsylvania. It's funny, Bill Gates in his ivory tower, literally, preaching it's a good thing, but he won't be affected. He'll still have his private jet and his private cars and his mansions, all with his giant carbon footprint.
You could take away 90% of his wealth, and he's still a billionaire.
That's true.
He has a lot of beachfront property for someone who thinks the ocean levels are going to be rising very soon, which is suspicious. And he probably has a bunch of apocalypse bunkers. He's the biggest farmland owner in the United States. He was asked directly, "Hey, how come you don't institute a lot of your green policies on your farms?" He's like, "I don't know. We don't have to." And I'm like, he just got called out for his hypocrisy, and it's hypocrisy after hypocrisy. And Epstein's friend here is not a good person, and he doesn't have your best interest at heart.
Well, so let me ask you, when you're talking a lot about energy, natural gas, is that specifically what you're able to produce? Or are you talking everything?
I'm talking about the three levels. And Revy and I have been out to a natural gas. Grass
is good too. I like that. Good for the cows.
Freedom gas, that's easier for me to say, rig out in Western PA. But so three levels. Natural gas is massive in the Marcellus Shale, and we've viewed how they extract it. It is safe. The water tables aren't being polluted. They actually put a concrete filter in to block our aquifers from being contaminated from this proprietary formula they use to extract it. And then, of course, coal and oil. The oil is very high grade. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that you use in important machinery. Any thoughts on this?
I think they said they could, if they had a plant in Pennsylvania, they could actually turn that into gas for the cars as well.
Yes, Revy's right. And so I was talking with one of the energy producers, and he's like, all we need is a refinery in Pennsylvania, and we can turn our natural gas to automobile gas. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Let's do that.
Gasoline?
Gasoline for
natural
our cars.
Gas into gasoline?
Wait, methane into gasoline? Is what
I don't know. I didn't ask him for the details, but I just said, let's do that.
Have you heard about, I think Ian brought this up. Was it you? That they turned plastic into diesel?
Yeah, you can turn plastic. Yes. Yeah. They found like in deoxygenated, high pressure, high temperature environments, you can melt plastic back into oil. It needs to be refined into gasoline, but it's going to become a valuable commodity is recovering the plastic.
Right, yeah. What do you think about stuff like that? Would you be interested as governor in exploring ways to source energy and fuels?
I mean, we have this stuff sitting around and the garbage heaps stinking up. I mean, and in the oceans. Let's use it that way.
You can also upcycle coal into graphene, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with graphene as a building.
Here we go.
Everyone drink.
21st century building material. It's like steel, more conductive than copper. It's like a capacitor, like a battery. It's pure carbon.
What do you do? You like take two sheets of it and you twist it or something? Like
you can do twistronic graphene. You can take multiple sheets of it, and they're layering it on top of each other. I don't think it's 1.13 degrees. Eventually, they're making superconductive carbon. It's a powder here.
Yeah,
this is pure carbon, and you can hit coal with lasers and turn it into this stuff, and then it burns cleaner, and then you can turn it into building materials, wiring. And what's going to happen by 2029? It'll be globally. This will become the new. It'll be adopted essentially. Peak graphene 2029. So if we get on it now and we start producing this stuff early,
Let's.
Ohio University is working on the upscaling of coal pretty heavily into graphene.
I would love Pennsylvania to take the lead on something like that. That'd be fantastic.
But check this out. Ian brought this up. So Ian's thing is graphene. When he's Graph Ian. But graphene is, he's writing it down. Ian, you got one. So, but here's something really interesting that Ian brought up. At the turn of the century in the 1800s, 1900s in New York, they said that there's going to be horse manure piling 10 feet high. The city will be unlivable. It'll smell. Then the car got invented, and there was no horse manure at all. It was gone. But there was a lot at the time. Ian brings up a good point that we're talking about global warming with carbon in the atmosphere, but they have carbon capture technology that can pull carbon, and they can mine it from the air to produce a material like graphene. So when we're talking about all this climate change stuff, it really does feel like people are discounting human invention, that we might actually, as Ian points out, have too little carbon in the atmosphere at that point when we start complaining about it. It's getting too cold.
We'll be able to, you withdraw the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, you can deposit it onto metals and then turn it into graphene, the carbon. You strip the carbon out of the carbon dioxide. You can also take methane out of the atmosphere, turn it into carbon dioxide, and then turn it into graphene. What's going to happen is we're going to create an industry where we're mining the air, and then we're going to start competing with trees for carbon dioxide. So we got to be real careful about the way we set this global industry up.
Ian's saying burn more gas.
Wow,
gotta burn more.
It's not a bad idea. If you can capture the carbon right out of the smokestack, that I think is ideal because you're not introducing. But at the same time, we got to start cleaning up what's already out there too.
I love it, especially since we're the second largest producer of hardwoods in the North America. So we got to balance that. That's for sure. That's amazing.
What about sustainability? I mean, can this can't last forever? Is there a timetable on how long you'll?
So I looked at a report, and obviously there's a lot of geological interpretation here. But they're saying we have about 2 or 3 centuries worth of energy underneath our feet in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what about 2 or 3 centuries later? By then we're using fusion energy.
Yeah, by then we have graphene and we have all kinds of, we have Mr. Fusion on the back of our cars like in Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.